like they're trying to push me to be the person that they're saying that I am, and like basically trying to make me this like monster, combative, wants to hurt people person.
She's not a fucking artist. I don't care about her fucking opinion because she has no accomplishments in art or has proven to me that she's actually intellectual enough to understand art. I accept my criticism from talented, smart people, not abusive, toxic, exploitative bullies on YouTube. I know that if I did anything like this, I would be called manipulative, sociopathic, narcissistic, attention-hungry, money-hungry, but that is what you are. What is it, you manipulative, narcissistic bitch?
Dude, that's the meanest thing you can call someone. I think irrelevant, because at its very core, you're saying this is all you're worth is these numbers, and without that, you're irrelevant.
You mean miss 4K views on your fucking makeup tutorial? Miss 4K views on your commentary piece a week ago? Yeah, I just went and checked.
Thanks for watching. Enjoy the show and stay tuned, because this is going to be the best season of the Gabbie Show yet.
I hate this channel.
Everyone wants to be famous at some point. You cherish the idea of being well known for an accomplishment, or 10, maybe being good at art, the best actor or actress, being a well-known musician, or anything you could dream of really. But who wants to be infamous? Who really wants to be known for being such a terrible, sick, unbelievably stupid, or even monstrous human being? No one really should, right? But what if the pursuit of fame makes you change route from being a great entertainer to one of the most mocked, joked about, and concerning individuals on the internet? Was this all self-inflicted, or were actions and words twisted to fit a narrative that wasn't even being written? These are some of the questions to ask yourself when diving down this rabbit hole of one Vine star turned YouTube personality where they've built a career that some would envy. Millionaire, I would assume, millions of fans, amazing life, their words, not mine, among other things. But what was the price of all this? Some would say all that happened brought an already troubled soul even more problems. Some justified, others not so much. But let's find out when we go through all of the actions to date by Gabbie Hanna. Is she a victim? Someone who could still redeem themselves? Or the monster all along? Also, I might bring back the critique sandwich concept in this one, because if she so happens to take anything away from this video, hopefully it'd be a nice serving of do better for fuck's sakes with a side of this is for your own good. So let's get into it. Vine, the app that we all longingly wish was back to replace what we now have, TikTok, which I personally feel that after the success of Vine stars like some of our non-problematic faves, and the problematic ones, many people wanted to get in on the idea of making short-form videos to become wildly popular and successful, though that's a different story for another day perhaps. One of our current problematic ones we'll be discussing, of course, is your favorite problem child, Gabbie Hanna. With 4.9 million followers and hundreds of millions of views by the end of the app's life in 2016, she established herself as one of the most successful Vine stars to continue their career beyond the platform. Her content was comedy and had a few glimpses of her talent in singing and character sketches. But other than that, honestly, it's not really my cup of tea, but it's worth saying that she built something for herself through following trends and adding a piece of herself into it to make it uniquely hers. Switching over to YouTube, she mostly made story times with a few makeup tutorials, trying new foods or snacks, and unboxing sprinkled throughout. Garnering 5.5 million followers, she had a personality that a lot of people liked. Throughout the years, she added music into her catalog, and while I haven't listened to much of her discography, I really do like Butterflies, which I'll revisit in a later point. She was also a part of the Vlog Squad, a group that consisted of other popular Viners turned YouTubers who made lots of questionable content up until recently. But in March of 2017, Gabbie got involved with her first of many more well-known incidents involving other YouTubers. And this involved a guy with an interesting background. RiceGum is a controversial creator with millions of subs, and he has been on the platform for about 9 years. Making content mainly dunking on cringy kids and other creators, he hasn't really posted anything to his channel within the past year. Recently, he's been caught in a very ethically questionable scandal, which I'll link some videos below explaining all of it, but essentially, he was one of the many influencers to promote some scam coin and kinda get away with it. Aside from that, he was one of the first to have a terrible interaction with Gabbie, though in this case, it wasn't completely her fault with the way how this whole thing went down. But let's start from the beginning. So on May 13th of 2016, RiceGum made a video talking about a tweet Gabbie made that said, and I quote, "If your entire channel is built on the name of other popular users for clickbait and search engine results, I don't respect your channel." I'm not ashamed. Anyway, RiceGum took it personally, which he then DM'd her telling her to @ him next time, because he assumed the tweet was about him. She responded with, "Then honestly, that's your own insecurity about it. Never assume what someone means. My tweets have never been and never will be directed at a single person, except when I quote their tweet." Followed by, "You may very well fall into that category, but that tweet wasn't with you in particular in mind." That response made me chortle a little, considering how she responds to people just liking tweets even vaguely talking about her, but I digress. He still took it personally, though maybe as a joke. He roasted some of her content using her statement against her and made a diss track. All was quiet up until March 28th of 2017, almost a whole year later. There was a party going on and the two happened to be attending. Gabbie realizes this and she decides to document the occasion on her Snap story, challenging him to a rap battle, which is probably all in fun to give her the benefit of the doubt. She poked a little fun at him, like, "You probably don't want the smoke cause your ghostwriter isn't here, but it's cool cause I'm trash too." And it was all in good spirits. He wasn't down for it though, and instead of just politely declining, he broke her phone. Now, the way we first heard this story was part of the reason why this whole situation got out of hand. See, the incident wasn't caught on Gabbie's Snap. The only thing we saw were before and after what happened. So already not much context. We were then told by Gabbie the first time that RiceGum hit her and smashed her phone. Gabbie was accused of lying by RiceGum fans. He went on Drama Alert to explain his side of the story, and this whole thing ended up being a mess. And yes, while there was an account of what really happened by Romeo Lacoste, I'll just take it with a gram of green, considering he was the only one to say anything out of the other dozens of people there, and well, I wouldn't really call him a reputable source. Regardless, this wasn't really a good look for Gabbie, but again, it wasn't completely her fault. RiceGum shouldn't have smashed her phone and just left, though Gabbie shouldn't have tried to constantly pester him about some stupid rap battle. If the man said no, you should have just walked away as well. But this was only the beginning of the drama-nado Gabbie got sucked into. The following is, of course, one of the most meme songs by a YouTuber that I'm currently aware of. So now we're gonna talk a bit about Gabbie's music career. As I said prior, I haven't listened to any of her music before the most recent events, but I've listened to a few of her songs recently and I have to say, I like some of them, and she's not a bad singer, but I feel like if she really wanted to be known as an artist and taken seriously, she really should put her time and energy more into songwriting and her music and not drama. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Gabbie released her first single, Out Loud, in 2017, and it came out with great reception. Following this, however, she had a public performance of this song that didn't go very well.
Still taste your presence. One sweet but it turns sour. Try to shake your difference, but it's too late now.
Now, I don't know if she's practiced beforehand or just said fuck it, we'll do it live, but I think there should have been more rehearsal time or something. Aside from her public performance faux pas, she released more music, refusing to let a few bad shows stop her. Her song Butterflies is, in my opinion, some of her best work, and it's hard for me to explain because I'm not fluent in the language of vocal terminology, but her voice seems better suited for these pop rock songs rather than the darker, edgier tone she's trying to pursue at the moment. Hey, some work, some don't. Anyways, there was a moment from a Genius interview that didn't really do her any favors. Now, Genius is a digital media company that is well known for some of its cringy yet mildly entertaining music artist interviews, where some artists try to explain the meanings behind some of their songs, though I'm not so sure what's so deep about any of these samples.
Waiter with my Coke, who doesn't care about my health? And we're like, the waiter's like, okay, what can I get you? They're not happy with their job. It's a job, and people gotta work, but at the same time, you should be happy with what you do. It's nice to know that people care about you, but sometimes your waiters, you can be okay if they don't.
I be flossing. I be flossing. I be flossing. I be flossing.
Laying in the bed that I made all alone. Guess I'm not surprised, honestly.
Obviously, nobody else is here with me in this bed, but it's also supposed to be a play on words when people say you made your bed, not lie in it.
Oh my God! Wow!
But in Gabbie's case, it was more than just the hidden deep meaning behind her level 3 lyric writing skills. See, the issue wasn't her singing per se. Instead, it was the fact that during her chorus, she belted out a little too hard and blew out her personal mic for a short time, in which the editor had to use the audio from a different mic, throwing off the quality in that one segment. Of course, the internet doing what it does best, the monster meme, was born.
So what if I'm the monster that's been here all along? What if I'm the monster?
Now, to anyone who has been on the internet since the days of good old dial-up, you'd know that memes are part of the complete internet experience. In many cases, memes are usually harmless and only encourage you to either do that little nose laugh or have you dying laughing from its cleverness or hilarity. In any case, if the subject of the meme is still alive, usually they're not too bothered by becoming a famous and relatable character tied to a common thought or feeling we've all had or shared at some point. But in this one, Gabbie didn't take it too well, tried to respond to it, and it was a bit painful to watch. She basically explained the song, the reason why it was styled a certain way. It wasn't her inability to sing with power without blowing out your eardrums, and Gabbie, sweetie, why are you even making this video? This whole thing bothers me because it really sounded like her feelings were hurt and she needed a hug and a girls' night. Also, she blamed everyone else for her bad interview. She really wanted to pretend that it just didn't bother her and rolled off her like water on a duck's back, but Gabbie, if it really didn't bother you, you wouldn't have talked about it. I'm sorry people on the internet gave you a hard time, but honey, as we all should understand at this point, the internet is like a frenemy. Yes, it can definitely cheer you up and be the sweetest thing ever, but this can also ruin your life, so you must choose your battles very wisely. And this is a fight you should have never tried to fight. It showed you as someone who can't take a joke or some basic criticism, a common theme as we go down the line. And not to mention, even after some of the leftover debris from the RiceGum drama, it all just piles up as we move on to the next scandal, which is what started a lot of the disdain she receives now, at least in my opinion. Now imagine being someone with a large following, promoting dangerous products or even bold-faced scams to the thousands or millions of people that adore and follow you for their own assorted reasons. Sounds very fucked up, right? 'Cause it is. Even to this day, there are creators that still shield their followers sketchy weight loss products or plain old cash grabs, and this situation was definitely the latter. Kenza Cosmetics was advertised as a makeup company with high quality brush sets, but at surprisingly low prices. Now, Gabbie wasn't the only one who promoted the sketchy company. Other influencers like Tana Mojo and Passibus did as well, though I will say they didn't have as bad of a backlash like Gabbie did. See, Tana is known for not really addressing many of her scandals and just keeping it moving. And I only heard of Passibus through This Is For Eileen. By the way, thank you for giving me more reasons to appreciate the female form. But Gabbie's response was, to me, really fucking disrespectful to everyone that was misled to believe, by her mind you, that they were going to be paying just shipping and handling on some normally very expensive high quality makeup brushes. I would even guess that to this day some people still haven't gotten their brush sets or even a refund over that. And it's been how many years? And what did you tell your fans? Oh yeah, you said, and I quote, to manage their expectations a little bit, because if you really want high quality brushes, you're gonna pay a really high quality price. Now, she didn't say verbatim that they were high quality brushes, I'll give her that. However, if you're gonna sit here and promote a brush set that's worth $80 that's been marked down to $0, you can't fault people for thinking that they were high quality brushes. I personally couldn't shell out that kind of money on makeup supplies because that's really not my thing, but obviously for the audience this product was geared toward, fuck yeah, they were gonna buy some bomb ass brushes for a bomb ass price. Also, something that I've learned is if any product is advertised, you only have to pay shipping and handling. Be a little skeptical about it. They're not always scams, but in most cases they might be. So just do a little research into the company or at least the type of product being sold so you don't end up wasting your money. But still, at the end of the day, this was poorly handled by Gabbie, and she was wrong for telling her fans that she duped into buying these brushes that they shouldn't have expected much when she was the one who set those expectations high to begin with. Moving on to the next layer of drama she's been in involves another controversial figure who is well known for their interesting perspective on certain things and in some cases, weird actions. Trisha Paytas. If you don't know who they are, I envy you to the nth degree. I was introduced to them via the Spunk Challenge. No, I don't remember how the fuck I got to the video. Don't ask me what I was doing beforehand. I just remember watching the video and I've never felt more disgusted on so many levels. But aside from that, they're also known for their trolling antics and as of late, their disastrous beef with their future in-laws. Trisha has gone through the motions of being someone that everyone already kind of knows to not take too seriously, as it's kind of hard to when they end up contradicting themselves way too often to know what their morals are, to telling the truth on some occasions, to then backtracking because. The inner mechanisms of their mind is an enigma, so we'll probably never know what the fuck is actually going on. But to tie this back to how Gabbie got into this mess, she decided it was a great idea to vent on her Instagram story and ask her fans, what would you do if you were told that your friend is sleeping with someone that you heard had an STD or STI? She goes on to say that she'd tell her friend to ask their sexual partner about it. And Gabbie, this approach is 100% not the way to go. Follow me for a second. My logic goes like this. If my friend was supposedly sleeping with someone who had something, I'd personally go to the person who is rumored to have said infection or whatever and talk to them about it. I say, hey, I'm not sure if this is true, but I heard from this person that you have blank and I just want to look out for my friend mostly, but of course I think you should also take care of yourself. Hopefully it isn't true, but if it is, I'll let you tell my friend because it's really your business to take care of. However, if you don't tell them and end up putting their health at risk, then I will tell them for you, and it probably won't be pretty. I feel like it's out of respect to go to the person directly and handle it there because honestly, this approach shouldn't cause much of an issue. If it's a rumor, then that individual can deal with whoever is spreading these stories around however they please. But if it happened to be true, then it forces that person to own up to their shit like the sexually mature person they're supposed to be. I don't feel like it's my place to disclose such information, especially when it doesn't have anything to do with me directly. But obviously, the logical route is not the one Gabbie took. Asking her followers a nuanced question with only a yes or no response is very irresponsible and gives off immature high school bully vibes. It's no one else's business but theirs, and it's not your place to say anything about it, even if you try to keep the parties anonymous. Though you did a shitty job at that too. Not to mention, Jason and Gabbie weren't necessarily friends, but more co-workers, considering they were both a part of an infamous influencer group, to say the least. One more thing I want to mention, how are you gonna say no, this isn't going around and gossiping about someone's sexual health to the internet when that's exactly what you did? No, you may not have stated their name, but people can read between the lines and kind of figure out who you're referring to. We aren't as stupid as you may think we are, Gabbie. Now, knowing Trisha, they didn't take this too well and uploaded one of their infamous kitchen floor vent videos going off on Gabbie, and in my opinion, rightfully so. The rumor about them having an STI or STD was completely untrue, and the fact that Gabbie didn't have the common courtesy to go to Trisha directly about it is probably what bothered them the most. I wouldn't trust anyone with my life if they couldn't respect me or my intimate details, plain and simple. There's something else from Gabbie's IG story that she said which really irks me, but I'll bring it up later as it's a reason why I personally have a hard time taking her seriously. But aside from that, let's also address the whole "were they actually friends" debate Gabbie wanted to keep up for so long. So between Gabbie and, well, herself, she used to say that she and Trisha were friends at one point. She has, up until now, as far as I know, continually claimed that she and Trisha were friends and were supposed to hang out for Thanksgiving one year, and Trisha ditched her. While I personally feel like this was such a stupid thing to hold on to, especially when you do the same thing to Jessi, but we're not there yet. I'll let you explain it yourself what happened, Gabbie.
We're talking about shit that happened so long ago, and we just have like some different perceptions where it's like neither of us are lying. It's just we perceive shit differently.
Now let's move on to one of the most egregious things Gabbie continues to do with someone else's trauma. Alright, so this entire situation is very complicated for a stupid reason, very sensitive, and I will do my best to be as respectful to Jessi while trying to explain this. I'm also going to try to not get too frustrated when talking about this because of the blatant disregard of someone's trauma, their existence as a whole, and using it as ammo to make yourself the victim, which is beyond monstrous, by the way. Content warning, I will be mentioning sexual assault, so proceed with caution. Also, as I would like to try to put this all in a concise timeline because there's so much to go through, a timeline wouldn't really stay cohesive for very long, so we'll have to follow along to these jumbled thought trains. Jessi Smiles is a YouTuber, previously a popular Viner that has had a very turbulent relationship with Gabbie Hanna. At one point, Jessi and Gabbie were roommates and even very close friends, though this friendship isn't really even a focal point in all this, but does definitely make all these actions prior to and after so much more devastating when everything is put into context. So, prior to the friendship of Jessi and Gabbie, Jessi was in a relationship with a fellow Viner named Curtis Lepore, which ended after he forced himself on her when she wasn't coherent enough to give him consent. When the news broke to the media that this happened to Jessi in January 2014, of course there were a lot of reactions to this news, some understanding and supportive, while others were absolutely dismissive of Jessi's trauma because of dangerous preconceived notions about sexual assault. Gabbie was one of those people that decided to make a bunch of tone-deaf tweets, but this is the only thing that I know of that Gabbie did before she and Jessi became friends and stuff, which happened in March of that same year. Now here's where we get into all the mess after Gabbie and Jessi fell out in March 2015, where Gabbie proceeded to become one of the worst ex-best friends to have ever existed on the planet. Gabbie's actions include defending the man who assaulted Jessi, then lying about defending him, hanging out with him on a few occasions outside of Jessi's knowledge, lying about hanging out with him, listening to Jessi's abuser tell his side of the story of what he did. For what, by the way? Making storytime videos that make Jessi seem like a crazy bitch roommate. Going into a young fan's DMs to completely manipulate her and feel sorry for Gabbie instead of hold true to the truth that Gabbie's actions were indeed trash. Also sharing private information to that fan about Jessi, which by the way she's done before with Trisha, saying things like, I'm allowed to hang out with who I want and I can't cut everybody out of my life in a 3-hour phone call with Jessi, which there are like 7 billion people on this planet to choose from to make friends, so constantly bring up Jessi's trauma in videos and articles as if it's her own trauma to talk about. Demand that Jessi publicly apologize to her for sharing private conversations publicly, though she did the same shit prior to this call, just maybe not in the same way, but still as bad. Also telling Jessi to sign an NDA so she can stop talking about it, although the only one running their mouth about this shit is you, Gabbie, but I digress. Wanting to sue Jessi to stop her from talking about it, but then turn around saying that she doesn't want to sue but rather go public with this mess and bring the fans into it because they were the ones who were affected. Using her poor mental health against Jessi as if Gabbie isn't more responsible for herself because she's a grown-ass woman that should be able to take care of herself and her mental health. Minimizing Jessi's hurt as emotional manipulation. Go fuck yourself with a cactus, please, no lube. Accusing Jen Dent, one of Jessi's friends, of something dark based on false allegations from some random guy from down under, just because. Also, of course, not apologizing properly to Jessi for any of her shenanigans stated above. I hope I didn't miss anything with this long list of misdeeds Gabbie has and will continue to do as stated by her to Jessi. And I'm not even done talking about all of the drama she's been in. I'm getting more than just heated talking about this. Let's all take a collective break for a few and just breathe.
And release all of those sounds that are trapped in your mind.
Alright, I'm ready. But I want to give this small message to Jessi. You are incredibly strong for going through all you went through and still staying somewhat optimistic about it all. You gave birth to such a miracle, and I wish you and yours many blessings with nothing but good vibes and energy your way. Let's move on to the next drama, one that didn't start out being Gabbie's fault, but something I feel she ended up taking too far. Now, I honestly want to keep this brief because of the sensitive nature of this topic, which I think has been blown out of proportion, but I'll explain that later. Also, there will be a link to the petition and scholarship fund in honor of Bianca in the description below. Long story short, Gabbie made a video which is now unlisted trying to turn herself into an e-girl via an article and references showing and explaining what an e-girl is. In the said article, it has a picture of a teenage girl, Bianca Devins, who is a victim of a terrible crime against her, and it briefly explains who she was as she was famous for her e-girl aesthetic. Gabbie paid no attention to this, which to be honest wasn't that big of a deal, when the whole point of her video was to understand the term or trend and turn herself into one as a light-hearted joke. Unfortunately for Gabbie, this escalated quickly as she was accused of using a red rum victim for views. This situation, I think, was used against Gabbie as a bad faith argument. Let me explain why. The whole point of this video was to follow a trend and put her own spin on it, something she's not new to. The bad faith was saying that Gabbie exclusively used a red rum victim for views when that was never the case. The article briefly mentions Bianca and what happened to her in a few paragraphs, while the rest of the article went back into talking about e-girls and e-boys. So why all the fuss over it, right? Well, a lot of healthy coffee alternatives, aka tea channels, took the unhealthy route of using this rhetoric to demonize Gabbie, and well, it worked. It didn't help that Gabbie had a bad reputation about her already, and I believe because of that, people just assumed the worst out of her from the get-go. However, this is not to say that Gabbie had no part in making the situation worse, because, well, of course she did. So here's what happened. Gabbie was accused, she responded, she was endorsed by the family of the victim, and yet she was still being absolutely dragged for what was, I think, again, very bad faith. After the Devins family spoke up about this whole thing, it should have just been dropped. But if that's what happened, we wouldn't be here. The only thing that was requested from the family of Bianca was if you're going to talk about her, please talk about her legacy, what she did, and basically just speak love into her name. They weren't offended by Gabbie's video at all. Frankly, they said Bianca herself would have been honored to be a part of it. But that sentiment was soured by the back and forth between Gabbie and all the channels that covered this topic, claiming Gabbie was such a bad person. Recently, in her umpteen-part docuseries, Gabbie made a video exclusively talking about the situation in unnecessary detail and demanding that everyone who accused her of such a heinous thing give the Devins family an apology. Though here's the problem. They said they didn't want the apology. They just want the constant disrespect of Bianca to stop and nothing more. So Gabbie, why lie and use the family as a way to make people feel sorry for you? If you are hurt and you want the apology, why not just say that? The other issue about her bringing this up is to not only unnecessarily make it about her, but I feel is, again, using someone's trauma to garner sympathy for herself, and I just can't. Again, links to supporting Bianca's Law and a scholarship fund in her name will be linked below, as to be honest, this is the only important thing to come out of the situation. And with that, let's move on to Gabbie's supposed nightmare she just had to escape from twice. Now, Escape the Night was a series made by one of our own, Joey Graceffa, to immense praise. The plot of the series is based around Joey playing himself as an heir to this home that was owned by a recently deceased distant relative of his. Unbeknownst to him, this place is haunted and holds many dark secrets that end up claiming a soul every time he and the chosen cast for the season get close to escaping this curse. It's basically like Clue, but with YouTube stars, a massive budget, and a pretty good narrative tied into it. I heard about the series when it came out, but didn't pay it too much attention before this drama. At this point, I have binge watched the entire series up until its latest 4th season, and I'm quite upset we don't have more yet. Please, Joey, I need more of this. It was getting so good. Besides, I was already hooked onto it the first episode from, well, I'll just show you.
Oh my God!
Later.
Oh no! Oh no! Jane is dead.
He died first. Anyway, we didn't know much about what happened behind the scenes of this show until interviews with Joey and a Q&A Daniel made, showing that while filming, there were only 2 people that made it difficult, which were surprisingly Sophia Nygaard and unsurprisingly Gabbie Hanna. The complaints on Sophia, which was just her not promoting the show enough, I think were unnecessary. Sophia doesn't seem like the type of person to live her life online or really be that active on social media besides her YouTube channel and the occasional Insta post. Gabbie, on the other hand, was no surprise. So Gabbie claims that the whole environment was essentially unprofessional because they didn't cater to her every whim and whine when you were on set with dozens of other people and you're not the star of the show. Joey was, mainly, and everyone else had their moments in the spotlight. She also claimed that the wardrobe was terrible as nothing fit her properly and she broke out in hives and other disgusting rashes because they didn't listen to her and practically forced her to wear such peasant rags. And the queen didn't get her lavish 3-course meal every day to soothe her sensitive palate and restrictive diet. Oh my. You didn't show up to your fittings, so the clothes didn't fit like they should have. You didn't get the food you wanted because you didn't fill out the form they asked you to take care of in advance before you were on set. Though even when someone did try to get you what you asked for, you didn't even eat it. Also, you had to wait on set in your full glam because that's how working on filming productions work. I also find it hilarious when you're being one of the most disrespectful people to work with and you have the gall to complain about unprofessionalism. Who calls someone simply doing their job a dumb cunt because you had to wait 10 more minutes to do an interview? Don't even get me started on a 3-minute voice memo you sent to Daniel. I really dislike using the word triggered because I'm not a gun, but listening to you talk about how hard it was for you to just be a part of a wonderful opportunity to do something big for yourself and your career was beyond ungrateful and honestly put me in mind of my own experience with dealing with someone that has narcissistic tendencies, and that feeling was not welcome. But I'll go more into that later. Also, if your schedule was going to clash so much with whatever projects and appointments you already had set up, then why would you accept going into this in the first place? If I'm being honest, this whole situation could have been avoided if you were just honest with yourself and everyone else and not push blame because you can't own up to your shit, which at this point reeks of intense self-importance and a giant ego. Even while watching Escape the Night with all of this in mind, I guess you could say this was mildly entertaining, but whenever I saw you on screen, I just wanted your scenes to be over. You came off incredibly selfish and extremely competitive while somehow being insecure. I do like to root for the villains annoying sometimes, but in this case, I couldn't bear it and I enjoyed watching your eliminations. Now let's move on to something a little more figurative and expressive, though some of these poems seem dead inside. And I mean that literally.
Roses are red, guns make a loud blast. 6 desserts that are better than 6, but not as good as Hey Ya by Outkast.
So among the many things Gabbie wanted to explore in the realm of art, she decided that she wanted to add poetry to her repertoire, and boy was it something. Now before I continue, I just want to preface that I did not want to patronize Gabbie, as I don't feel comfortable giving my money to someone like her when I feel it could be put to good use, like buying weed or Valorant gun skins, don't judge me. So I won't be able to review all of her poems and just give a review on what was available for free. I also want to mention that this will probably end up very biased because I very much love poetry. I wrote poems on and off for years, though a bit more seriously in college for about a semester. It means a lot to me, and for a person who struggles with talking about themselves or putting feelings into words, poetry is such an amazing medium where you have no limits on trying to express how you feel and really emphasize on the joy or melancholy you feel at the time of writing. But let's talk about her stuff for a sec. September 17th, 2017, Gabbie published her first poetry book, Adultolescence, to mixed reviews at best. But of course, congrats to her for being a New York bestseller. She introduced some of her poems onto Twitter, and as one would expect, Gabbie got absolutely clowned because of her poor choice in samples from her book. Now, I'll give her some credit. With the samples I was able to read through Genius, she actually has some good poems, though I think there is room for improvement. But the ones we saw, like Relative and the most famous link in bio, yeah, there's definitely some better material in here, but the first impression wasn't very good, and frankly it really did her a disservice. Though, just to throw a little shade at this point, it's not very surprising that her marketing strategy is questionable, to put it mildly. I read through the free samples on Genius, and while I wasn't too disappointed with what I read, there were a few duds in there, but overall, there were more poems I ended up liking than not. My few qualms with this book is that it's called Adultolescence, but written through the eyes of an abused child. I don't know, maybe that's just me, but continuity matters, and even in the book the tone changed to an adult, or the subject matter sounded a little too mature for a child at times, but then again, certain abuse can mature a child far beyond their age. Overall, Adultolescence, I give a 6.5 out of 10. So honestly, this isn't too bad a personal rating on her first book, and of course, this is just the beginning of her writing. Now in response, Gabbie came out with a video that I would assume is either private or deleted, where Gabbie tried to explain that some of her poems were a lot deeper than they seemed. Poems like Sleepin' Bird are some of the ones she tried to make look more complex than they actually were, but honestly don't make a lick of sense, because if they were deep, you would have shown us that and not told it. With that being said, let's take a look at her second book. The sequel, Dandelion, came out on October 13th of last year, and hopes were high, at least for those who felt that Gabbie had room to grow and be better. Yeah, well, reading through some of the samples I could find, while there weren't as many poems available as her last book, overall the quality of what was shown was a bit better, and I gave it a 7, so half a point of improvement. Hey, you don't instantly get better overnight, so this is still progress. But aside from her poetry, let's talk about how she reacted to her criticism. So between these two books, Gabbie has gotten both praise and shame over her work, and while I can understand her not being okay with people saying how shit her first book was, cause that's not helpful in any way, dismissing actual constructive criticism as hate is a disservice to yourself. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Having a public platform means you will get all types of feedback. The only way to get better is to listen to helpful suggestions and tips. Putting out the same quality of work all the time and expecting the same, if not greater, fanfare every time is ludicrous. As to no surprise, Gabbie has taken the route of dismissing everything, but has taken a step further to snap back at her critics, but not in the best way possible. Rachel Oates, another unfortunate victim of Gabbie's animosity, is a YouTuber that is well known for her reviews on influencers' literature, as well as other content like science videos, commentary videos, etc. She's talked about other celebrities' influencers' poetry, and regardless, she's pretty well versed in the language of poetry, and she can explain very well why some poems work and others don't. But on December 16th of 2019, she released a video saying that Gabbie's first poetry book was bad. Now, as explained in her video, art is subjective, which is true. Everyone has their own opinions, so someone's favorite can be someone else's least favorite. Now, Rachel proposed a good argument against the subjectiveness of art, which is, if I'm paying for it, I have the right to critique your work, which makes sense. It'd be a different story if it was published on a blog for free, but if I'm giving or losing something in exchange for your art, I have the right to feel buyer's remorse if I feel that what I paid for isn't worth the product I got. So, Rachel also made light of the situation and made parody poetry of Gabbie's adultolescence book. I've read it, it's cute as fuck, and it also makes me really want to go get a dog myself one day. But, of course, as you would guess, Gabbie didn't take this too well either, and of course responded in the most unnecessarily aggro way possible. 2 years later, of course, because being unfashionably late is Gabbie's specialty. Remember this, Rachel bought Gabbie's first book and reviewed it. It wasn't super harsh, but it was constructive criticism. Gabbie also sent Rachel her second book for free to review, because why else would you send a book reviewer your book if you didn't want her to review it? And Rachel's Dogolessons book is literally just for gits and shiggles, so there was no harm intended on its creation. Moving on to Gabbie's late-ass reaction, she came out throwing haymakers, or at least trying to, by explaining what really happened between her and Rachel, and why Rachel deleted her Twitter. Gabbie complained to a mutual friend of hers and Rachel's that she wasn't too fond of the critiques and wanted Rachel to not make anymore. The videos are still up, so Rachel said no, which I utterly respect, and this is where shit hits the fan. Gabbie stans have been bombarding Rachel with so much evil-spirited shit that she had to deactivate her Twitter account just to get away from all the mess. Gabbie also made an entire ass out of herself on her 50-plus part Instagram story, and I'm just gonna play some of her comments and we'll go from there.
You can't take criticism towards yourself at all. I've still never blocked you after all of the harassment, but you can't stand even the tiniest ounce of criticism. You're a fucking monster. You're a bitch. Said everything I want to say unless she opens her fucking mouth and says something else, because I just want to let everyone know I don't give a fuck anymore about pretty much anything. I mean, I clearly give a fuck. What I mean is I don't give a fuck what people think about me, so I'm gonna start speaking my mind.
Watching this really infuriated me, considering this entire story is hypocritical, vile as fuck, and shows that Gabbie loves to constantly play the victim, but then act like she doesn't care and is unbothered. But baby girl, if you were truly unbothered, then why the fuck are you making a long ass Instagram rant on it and name calling people like a high school bully? I'd love to see the mental gymnastics in action to try to answer this question. In the nature of stans, Rachel got a lot of hate and nasty things thrown her way due to Gabbie's behavior, and to no surprise, she refused to take any responsibility from her actions of bringing up old stuff, but in terms of wanting to defend herself. It's not you defending yourself, Gabbie, it's harassment, plain and simple. I'm gonna touch on the blatant watering down of the term narcissistic abuse, as this is kind of personal to me later on in the video, so let's just put a pin in that. I haven't fully covered this topic as there was another player in the shitty game, but if you want more of that, I'll link a video down below that can go over the whole situation between Jimmy Snow, Gabbie Hanna, and Rachel. I also want to mention that she also made a tweet trying to say that the people who ridiculed her poetry just don't get it because they don't have neurotypical brains. I have a bone to pick with her on this too, but more on that later. Before I continue, I just have this short message for Rachel. I'd really admire your knowledge of poetry and literature, and maybe someday I'd love to have you read mine, though I'm not confident enough to publish it currently. You have such an adorable doggo, and I wish you both the best. Also, could I get a signed copy of Dogolessons? That'd be great, thanks. Overall, this is another situation in which it really makes me lose respect for Gabbie, and she not only couldn't be mature about this in any way, but shows how she likes to use very strong language against people that just have even the slightest opposition to her. Here's the honorable mentions of all the people that Gabbie has dragged through the mud with her.
When I started this series, I told myself that this was my goodbye and that I was going to burn everything to the ground, and if I lost everything that I'd be okay with that, because I would rather lose everything and start over than continue in this cycle that I've been in.
Girl, shut the fuck up. You thought you ate that? Bitch, you
Alex James was one of Gabbie's friends back in the old Vine days. Since then, Alex has had his fair share of bull dealing with Gabbie over the years, and he's recently debunked a lot of the claims and excuses Gabbie has made, including the ones when talking about himself and Jessi. There are a few things that he's brought up that I will also address later. I know the list is getting long, but don't worry, I'm keeping track of it all. He clarified that 1. Gabbie has a double standard when it comes to mental health. It's perfectly fine for her to say and do vile things because she's having a mental breakdown, but when someone else does it, it's fake or emotional manipulation. 2. When she tried to contact him to apologize for calling him a bad person randomly in a podcast, she contacted the wrong number but continued to claim it was him just so she can say that when he didn't reach back out to her, she tried her best. 3. In passing, Gabbie said he physically hurt her in her docuseries with no proof. 4. Gabbie prank calls him pretending to be the hacker that he dealt with prior to that harassed him, and Gabbie knew about it. She helped him get his Vine account back anyway. She made him say horrible things about himself because she could through fear. Luckily, she didn't post a vlog of herself making Alex degrade himself for her entertainment. But this is still incredibly gross. 5. She had the nerve to hang out with one of Alex's closest friends and talk to them about the stuff he allegedly said to her. You know, losing weight and getting a nose job. She never name-dropped him, but girl, if you're insecure, just say that. And 6. Alex brought up a time when he was in a shitty financial situation. He had asked Gabbie for $4,000. Holy fuck, that's a lot of money. Anyway, she responded with, "Alex, I know that took you a lot to admit, but I can't because I'm paying for all of my music shit, so I can't give you the money." The last part is paraphrased, but the first part isn't. It took you a lot to admit? The fuck you mean by that? Alex added a perspective I feel is important to take into consideration. As he stated, we'll never truly know who Gabbie is unless we've actually met her in real life and became friends. Though of course for sanity's sake, it'd be best not to as of now. I will link his videos in the description as he goes into more detail, and he's extremely funny. Jen is someone who has dealt with the worst of what Gabbie stans are comfortable with doing, which would be being accused of sexually assaulting a child. See, there was a random Twitter account that had accused Jen of that with absolutely no proof, and yet Gabbie stans were more than happy to spread this just to spite Jessi, who is a very close friend of Jen's. What was the reasoning? Well, Jen loves to throw around accusations, so we can too, and if it's true, then that would be a plus. So they didn't care if it was true or not, just throwing around an assault accusation is perfectly fine and not something serious that might ruin someone's life, right? That doesn't seem like there's anything wrong with that at all. Also, yes, Gabbie, you signed off on that by saying it's super dark and not even giving any evidence to support your claim, even though you asked if Jessi's seen it. Don't kid yourself. Hello Leash, or Alicia, has been dealing with the backlash of Gabbie stans and even some mess from Gabbie herself. However, I'm sorry to say I don't have all the information on this drama, and as late as this video is, I don't have the time or energy to look over hours of videos to find out the origin. Although as of late, Miss Leash has now been said to be someone who isn't as innocent as she seems either. If I'm inclined enough to do so, I'll look into it, but as far as I know, some of it is more bullshit that's started because of misinformation and bias, and some has some truth to it. Here I'll mention the interesting story of how Gabbie has decided to take some legal action against some of her disgruntled former and some current patrons because of them compiling a list of what they haven't been liking from her behavior, DMing people who criticize her to play the victim and make them feel bad. Some habits die hard, huh, Gabbie? And playing favorites with her higher tier patrons. The legal action came about when Gabbie found out one of her patrons made a Google Doc on her with their grievances, and Gabbie threatened to sue some kids over slander. Baby, it ain't slander if it's true. So there was a girl who made a TikTok video showing pictures she had taken with some internet celebrities and talked about her experiences with some of them, though she was only joking about having bad ones with almost all of them. Gabbie once again took it personally and threatened them with legal action. Girl, you are too much. All Dominic did was play Smasher Pass at one point during the time of YouTube where that was a thing. Gabbie's picture came up and he said that he'd pass because she's not his type. That's literally all he said, and yet he over exaggerated and said, "What about him?"
Said, "Well, you're too short for me to fuck."
Right, that's totally appropriate and called for. This whole situation started because Gabbie Hanna fans were accusing the singer BB Rexa of stealing a concept for a music video that Gabbie made. Gabbie was getting frustrated that BB wasn't making a big deal out of it, because it wasn't, and also showing that the concept isn't original at all. Gabbie didn't like that. She also pulled the "I have to stand up for other indie artists because I have to protect the little guy," though this sentiment falls pretty flat when she hasn't talked about it again since. All Oscar did was like a tweet that referred to Gabbie. She obviously didn't like it and tried to put him on blast just because he liked a tweet that vaguely talked about her. I think that's it with all of the honorable mentions. Now we have a lot to unpack here. Remember all those things I said to put a pin in? Yeah, I want to go more in depth on some of those and maybe make it make sense for some people. Specifically you, Gabbie, because I got a couple bones to pick with you.
Well, if it isn't the consequences of my own actions. What's up? What's up?
Alright, Gabbie to Gabbie talk. So where do we start? Do I talk about how inconsiderate and self-centered you were being while on the phone with Jessi? Or what you said to and about Dominic? Which, by the way, I find it funny how you're like, "You're objectifying me," but then you say you're too short for me to fuck. Like, come on, are you for real? I shouldn't have to show you all the shit you've said and done. It's literally everywhere. But it's like, you say shit because you don't put any thought into it, then you wanna wonder why people don't like you. First, let's get a few things straight here, cause you love to throw around narcissistic abuse, exploitation, and gaslighting around. So let's start with the last one first. You had this little pop-up saying that gaslighting is a tactic used to confuse the victim and convince them that they're crazy. So you talking to one of Jessi's fans privately trying to tell her that if any evidence she finds of you supporting Curtis being fake isn't you gaslighting her? Next up, exploitation, which I need to define it in the way you love to use it. It's the action or fact of treating someone unfairly in order to benefit from their work. I know right off the bat you'll claim that Rachel exploited you. But here's the thing, how the fuck is it exploitation when you still handsomely benefit from your own stuff? $40,000 a month in royalties from your own book? I'm not aware of how much she solely made from her videos on your book, but I don't think it's nearly that much. Also, how would it be unfair? You'd most likely gain free publicity from her videos and a broader audience than you initially were expecting. Finally, let's talk about your favorite word, narcissism. I saved this one for last because I have personal experience dealing with someone that has narcissistic tendencies, and a lot of what you do sets off red flags for me. The screenshot you used was to define narcissistic abuse, or narc abuse for short. It basically explains that public narc abuse is hard to recognize, but it leaves you feeling confused, upset, or even guilty for your mistakes. But the problem with you is that you rarely ever shown guilt for most of your actions, and you found some sick way to justify them. The only one I can think of is when you said you felt guilty for saying Alex was a bad person randomly on a podcast. I don't really count the Devin situation because, as I've stated before, I feel like that whole situation was uncalled for and started a lot of mess that shouldn't have been started. I also have never mentioned the whole joke stealing thing because while it's the only thing you've ever properly apologized for, I'm pretty sure it's the only thing you've ever properly apologized for. Also, it's extremely minor considering all of the shit that I literally just brought up. But hey, if you can come up with one thing that couldn't be debunked, let me know. I also find it interesting that you don't define narcissism, though you love to use it so liberally. But narcissism, as defined through psychology, something you have a degree in, I might add, is selfishness involving a sense of entitlement, a lack of empathy, and a need for admiration, as characterizing a personality type. Need I say more? Can I just find it absolutely rich that someone with a psych degree is just so flagrantly throwing around these heavy terms just to bully people with them? Gabbie, let me explain something to you. You genuinely seem so full of yourself that you barely notice anyone around you suffering from your own massive ego. Saying, "Oh, I could fuck both of your parents and the one you love most, but I chose not to," is so fucking egotistical. And by the way, as being a product of my parents, I can 100% say that I don't have to worry about that because you're not their type. Same with the person that I love most. Like, I'm proud that you feel comfortable with your body after being teased about it for so long, but your ego is at a 20. I need you to bring it down to a 2 and humble yourself. no one is really trying to come after you. And I should probably spell out my intentions of this video so you don't assume anything or read between the lines. I'm making this video to help you understand what the fuck is going on and maybe encourage you to do some self-reflection. I can speak for myself when I say I want you to stop instantly becoming the victim whenever something happens to you and look how you would have handled things better. I want you to actually grow to your full potential and achieve whatever dreams you might have. But it's hard to root for you when you're so nasty to others. I may not know you personally, but I can still wish you good things because that's not hard to do. I also want to touch on your IG rant from the Trisha drama. I wonder if you ever understood that pointing something out that shouldn't have to be pointed out makes you seem very disingenuous.
I am somebody who, not to toot my own horn, but beep the fucking beep. I am so kind to people in my life. Here's the thing about being a good person. Good people aren't obsessed with everybody knowing that they're a good person. Good people do good things quietly.
This unironically ties into the show don't tell concept when I was talking about your poetry. Apparently you need to understand this concept for more than just literature. I say that because if you're truly happy with yourself and your life, half of the events that have occurred throughout the years wouldn't have even happened, honestly. I instantly don't believe people that brag about how generous they are or how good of a friend they were to someone or how kind they are as a person. If it were true, Gabbie, you wouldn't have to say it. We'd just know. I will briefly mention your constant excuse of I have ADHD, so this is why I act this way. Gabbie, stop. Please, for all that is good in this world, don't you ever again in your life excuse your shitty behavior on your unique brain chemistry.
Look at my lips, you're ruining it. Ruining.
Just because you have insert mental diagnosis here doesn't make you do or say terrible things to people. You choose to do and say those things. If anything, you having ADHD might explain why you've done things, as it may cause you to act very impulsively, you're forgetful, or you have temper tantrums. But that doesn't mean those actions were ever okay. I've also dated someone who's had ADHD and they didn't act anything like you did. So I'm pretty sure this is just a you thing. Also, while I unsubscribed to the Christian belief system years ago, I think it's an honor to be named after one of the most important angels that is at God's side. Gabriel is said to always bring good news whenever he's around. I'm gonna need you to take some notes and take it to heart because you're not gonna be named Gabrielle Jeanette Hanna and be known for a bunch of bad news every time you come around. Last thing, from one stoner to another, please stop saying smoking a J. They're called joints, spliffs, or doobies. Pick one. You're not being quirky trying to call it something else either. It's just annoying at best. Okay, thanks, babe. I'm sorry it took me so long to make this. Not gonna lie, I struggled with making this as there was a lot going on behind the scenes, but I made a promise, one that I made sure I was going to keep. I know there are a lot of Gabbie videos out there and this will probably be just another one, but I hope this might give a better perspective to her and maybe help her change. I know I'm giving her the benefit of the doubt because I genuinely do believe people can change and do better, but sometimes you might have to address someone directly and force a mirror in front of them to start the transformation. I also know I said I was going to do the critique sandwich for her, but I feel like I gave a bit of a banquet in terms of constructive criticism, as well as some little back pats for encouragement. I also know there are other things I didn't mention, but like this is the longest script I've made, and I kept getting extremely frustrated while making this because it's so much stuff to talk about when you mention Gabbie's long list of offenses and how it's going, because when you don't have self-awareness, you do a lot of dumb shit that could be seen as self-sabotage. But regardless, I hope you all enjoyed the video, enjoyed the new assets I have. Look forward to a few format changes as I'm trying to tweak a few things with the new sprites. If you have any suggestions or comments on the video or anything really, let me know in the comments below. No BS though, we don't allow that here. Anyway, I'll see you fluffs next time. Bye!